Our title today, Peer Support Unveiled, the Power of Asking the Rare Questions. I served in the United States Army and then coming into the community, serving as a peer specialist and currently serving with the American Legion as a chaplain for the Department of California. So I continue to serve because that is just what I find is my passion, as my heart, and that's what I do. And that is the crux of the peer support specialist. It's not just a job. If you're employed as a peer specialist, it's great, you're employed, you get paid. But sometimes as a peer specialist, we just get the joy from serving one another, serving someone else who's been where we've been, being able to share our story and being able to let others know what is going on in our world because of those questions that are hardly asked. So essentially our agenda today, to welcome an overview, bridging research and practice. What are the rare questions? And then addressing the rarely asked questions, then any key takeaways and next steps, and then of course our Q&A. So we're going to start with this webinar. What we're doing here is we're looking at those overlooked aspects of peer services and being able to navigate beyond the common inquiries. There are things that are asked of all peer specialists. There are things that are common that are already standard when it comes to setting up a clinic, setting up a program, utilizing peer services. But then there are those questions that don't get asked until the situation arises, until the circumstance causes an adverse reaction. So we're going to explore and harness the power of these rare questions so that we can deepen our understanding and enhance the impact of peer support programs. All too often, once again, we miss those things at the beginning. There was an incident, there was an opportunity for one of these rare questions it was brought to the surface because a peer specialist was involved in a situation with with someone that she was supporting. And when it was all said and done, when everything was done, the peer supporter was not well. The peer supporter had been triggered, there were things that were going on with the peer supporter that were out of the ordinary. And nobody came and asked the peer supporter, "How are you?" Nobody addressed what might be going on with that peer supporter. And so that brought to mind those rarely asked questions, because sometimes places are not set up to support the peer. We're supporting those who come into the service. We're supporting those who come into the agency. We're supporting those who we're assigned to, whether we're assisting a social worker in case management, whether we're working in the hospital or in the community. We're equipped to do that. But then as the peer supporter, what happens with us? We know that we do self-care. That's part of what we do. It's imperative that we practice self-care. But sometimes before we get to that point of self-care, there's that layer that has to be addressed about what happens to us. So that's an example. So the objectives for today: defining the importance of bridging research and practice in peer support. These things happen not just out of happenstance, but they're documented information about what has happened, what could happen, and how do we address it? How do we apply it to the services where we're working? And then we're going to introduce the concept of those rarely asked questions and then their significance. We will discuss those via case studies. So starting out with the importance of bridging research and practice. It's vital because what it does is it fosters a dynamic and effective ecosystem. This ecosystem, it impacts individuals facing mental health challenges. That's the supporter as well as the one who is being supported. And this brings together the depth of those theoretical insights from research. In research, we have these things where we've looked at situations, we looked at a number of situations, we've asked all these questions, But now we have to bring it into real world applications. We have to put it into practice so that we can continue improving the world of peer support. And some of these reasons, when we talk about bridging that research and practice, we're looking at informed decision-making. Research provides evidence-based insights into everything that peer support is made up of. It offers a foundation for this informed decision-making. So when we integrate these findings into practice, our peer support programs can tailor their approaches to meet the diverse and evolving needs of the individual seeking assistance. When we put research and practice together, we're able to ask the right questions. We're able to make the right moves, provide the right resource, and we're able to do the things we're supposed to do because now we're informed. And then we have quality improvement, continually evaluating and refining the aspects of our programs. That is crucial to making peer support successful in any endeavor. When we bridge the research and the practice, it allows the organization, be it a hospital or an agency, it provides that organization the ability to critically assess the impact of their peer support initiatives, identify areas for improvement, and implement evidence-based strategies to enhance overall program quality. Quality improvement. When you know what could happen, let's put it into practice so it can happen. And then enhanced efficacy. Research findings contribute to a deeper understanding of what works in peer support. That research helps us to see what works in peer support. So by incorporating this knowledge into practice, organizations can design interventions that are more likely to be effective, fostering meaningful connections and positive outcomes for individuals in need of support. If we don't know what works, if we don't understand what works, then the research that has been done is for naught. And then we get to the professional development of the peer specialists. When we look at the research and then putting it into practice, this encourages ongoing professional development for the peer support provider. It empowers that peer support with the latest evidence-based practices and ensures that our skills remain aligned with the evolving landscape of mental health support. Things that went on 20 years ago have been improved upon. But if we as peer specialists don't continue to develop our skills, then we will be putting new wine into old wineskins. We'll be trying to do new stuff with the old practices, or old practices in the new stuff. And that's why when we take research and the practice and we put it together, we as a peer, we develop our skills and we become more professionally aligned with the programs, with the mental health, with the mental health area, whatever area we're working in, we become more aligned with our skills and are able to provide the best service that we can to those whom we are serving. And then also this bridging the research and practice cultivates innovation. We have the research and we're able to get to and stay at the forefront of innovative interventions, whether it involves new technologies or novel approaches. We can take this and it ensures that our peer support services remain relevant and responsive to the changing needs. Advancing cultural competence. The research has shown that the cultural factors and diverse perspectives can be integrated into cultural competency training for peer support providers. This ensures that the support that we give as a provider, the support that we give through our lived experience, the support that we give through our conversation that it is not only empathetic, but also tailored to the unique cultural backgrounds and the preferences of those seeking assistance. That's important because no one person knows everything, but as a peer specialist, the empathy that we have, it transcends to the ones that we are giving support to. And then that research and practice, it allows us to reduce stigma, the stigma of mental health services, the stigma of desiring to get help, even the basic stigma of asking for help. Research on stigma reduction strategies, they can inform practical initiatives within peer support programs. So this knowledge, putting this knowledge into practice, helps create an environment where we're actively challenged to reduce the stigma that is associated with seeking mental health services. And it also fosters open and supportive communities. And lastly, this is not the last one. This is not an exhaustive list of reasons why bridging that research and practice are important, but this is the one that we will be addressing today, addressing the rarely asked questions. When we look at research and practice, this enables us to explore those questions that aren't common to everybody's situation. These questions that are not common to every agency, these questions that may be specific to a particular group or particular population or particular environment, we get to ask and address those rarely asked questions. We get to uncover those insights that may have been overlooked because of this is the way we've always done it, or this is how it's been done, or this is what I know to be the practice that we've been doing. When we get to those rarely asked questions, we're not discounting any of that, but we're able to step it up a notch, if you will, where we're now able to offer more comprehensive and inclusive services because we've asked those questions that no one has asked before. Those rarely asked questions. The frequently asked questions is that list of everyone thinks about, but the rarely asked questions are the ones that are important, but sometimes they don't surface until it's too late. Some of the organizations that come to mind when we talk about bridging research and practice, we have NAMI, National Alliance on Mental Illness, Mental Health America, Center for Mental Health Services, the Veterans Health Administration, and several peer-run organizations, not only in our city, not only in our state, not only in our country, but around the world. When we look at these organizations, in various ways, they collaborate with researchers to get the latest findings and to integrate those findings within the populations that they serve. And when they do that, those rarely asked questions become frequently asked questions because now we see it implemented in another area. So we want to bring that to the area that we're working in. It's kind of like that plate envy. When you're at a restaurant and you see somebody's plate walking, you see a server walking with someone's plate and you see, oh, that looks good. What is that? I think I'll try that. Those are the things you never would have thought to try that. You looked at the menu, the same thing was on the menu, but because you saw it somewhere else, it kind of triggered your mind. It sparked you to say, I want to try that. And that's what happens with those rarely asked questions. That's what happens when we address the situations that don't come up that often, but they are important. So what are the rare questions? What are the rare questions? Now, the common questions, they start with what and how. How do we get those who want support to come to our office? What do we do when someone comes in? How do we set up the program? Those are common questions, and those are easily addressed because they're so common. They're easily addressed because that's the setup, the basic setup for everyone's service, for everyone's agency. But then those common questions overlook the why and the what if. What if somebody comes in that has this diagnosis or is of this culture? What if somebody asks about this over here? Do we do that, or how would we go about taking care of that what if situation? Why is it why are we setting it up this way instead of another way? So those are the common questions, and then how to figure out whether it's a rare question, looking at those rare questions. So we're going to explore some of these questions that are seldom asked in peer workforce discussions. This is where we get into the meat of it. So we're going to go through several case studies. I have 5 case studies, and we're going to look at the case studies and examine what the case study is, and then how we are to apply how we're looking at the research and the practice. So in this first case study, a no-name mental health nonprofit recently implemented a peer support program. And in doing so, they recognize the importance of fostering authentic connections among individuals facing mental health challenges. So we're looking at the vulnerability in peer services. So the question, why is acknowledging vulnerability crucial in peer support services? That's a question that's not always asked. The peer support, the peer specialists, they bring their experience to the table. They bring what they've gone through to the table. So how are we going to acknowledge the fact that what they bring to the table could not only affect them, but also affect the person that they're serving? When we look at vulnerability, we're realizing that it fosters authentic connections and creating a safe space for shared experiences and mutual understanding. So when we acknowledge that the vulnerability exists, then we can do something about it. Then we can take steps to move forward in applying the answer to the programs that we're setting up. So let's look at these implementation strategies. The research component, the researchers would conduct interviews with both the peer supporters and the recipients, and they will examine how vulnerability fosters authentic connections. How does that work? Is that really something that we should be looking at? That's what the research would tell us. And then when we take that research and apply it, the organization integrates the findings by emphasizing training on vulnerability acknowledgement. Are you able to come forward? Are you able to own? Are you able to acknowledge those things that are making you vulnerable in this space? Recognizing that it is a safe space, but as the peer, are you able to operate in this space, in this type of space, and still acknowledge that you have vulnerabilities? So the peer support providers would undergo workshops to highlight the importance of sharing their personal experiences within appropriate boundaries. As a peer, when you lay your stuff on the table and someone else's, and you're supporting someone else, sometimes we get lost. Sometimes we don't know that we hit a soft spot. Sometimes we don't realize that that soft spot can hinder us doing our work. So when we look at what happens when we acknowledge those vulnerabilities, we establish that trust. Trust is established, which is one of the cornerstones of peer support, because it creates, when we establish that trust, by acknowledging our vulnerability, we create a foundation of trust between the peer supporter and the one receiving the services. By openly sharing our personal experiences, we as peer supporters demonstrate authenticity, making it easier for individuals seeking support to open up about their own struggles. Without that authenticity, that trust is not developed. We're not seen as the one who I feel I can get true support from. Another resulting behavior is reduction of stigma. These open discussions contribute to destigmatizing our mental health challenges. When peer supporters share their vulnerabilities, it challenges societal perceptions and fosters an environment where individuals feel comfortable discussing their own mental health fear or judgment. And this is done without fear, without judgment. Enhancing the connection, that emotional connection between peers. When the vulnerability is acknowledged, that connection becomes stronger. The connection is essential for effectiveness of peer support interventions. If there is no connection, and people can feel, as a peer, you can feel when there is no connection. When you are seeking services, you can feel when there is no connection. And knowing your vulnerabilities would enhance your ability to emotionally connect with others. Encouraging open communication. Acknowledging that vulnerability encourages open and honest communication. Again, a cornerstone of peer support services. The transparency contributes to the overall success of the peer support program. Promoting emotional well-being is crucial. It's a crucial aspect of our own emotional well-being. When individuals feel safe to share their vulnerabilities, they are more likely to experience a sense of relief, contributing positively to their mental health journey. And then the validation of lived experiences. Both the peer supporter and the receiver, the recipient, the one who's receiving the services, their lived experiences are validated because I've acknowledged that, yes, I'm vulnerable. This is not just a routine. This is not just something that I do, but this is what I am made of. This is my experience. And then lastly, under the vulnerability, we're embracing vulnerability. It contributes to the development of resilience. We're able to be empowered. We're able to be strong. We're able to use this as a stepping stone toward growth. So when we look at the vulnerability and acknowledging the vulnerability, that impact is the very essence of an effective peer support relationship, a peer support program, and just peer support in general. I want to take a break here and ask, are there any questions about this first case study and acknowledging vulnerability? So I was trying to see the chat to see if there were any comments in the chat.
There is nothing in the chat currently.
Okay, thank you. Any questions or thoughts on the first case study?
Jean says, pretty risky.
How so? When we say pretty risky?
Well, I'm not a peer specialist yet, but I do run Recovery International meetings, and sharing yourself, I know I acknowledge completely that you're absolutely spot on with that. It's just can be, you have to be ready for a response or for a that might not make you feel as comfortable as you would like to be. That's all.
And that is true, because as a peer, you're acknowledging that you're vulnerable. And where we are here with this case study, the program is the one that wraps their arms around that peer, letting them know that this is a safe space. So in my previous employment, we as peers, usually on a job, usually in an employment setting, no one knows the issues of any other person. Your issues are personal and private to you. But as a peer, whatever's going on with you, you may not have identified it exactly to your employer, but if you're a peer specialist, and I'll just use the VA, the first requirement is that you have to be in recovery. So everyone you work with knows that you are in recovery. They may not know in recovery from what, but they know that you're in recovery. So as having a supportive program of supportive supervisors, even reaching out to your peers. And it may be something that starts with your peers to be able to express that vulnerability that you as a peer have, so that you're not, it's not a ticking time bomb for when you get ready to encounter someone else, to engage someone else. So being able to acknowledge and express those vulnerabilities are what would make you that more valuable peer, because now you're using more lived experience to help the next person, to support the next person. So yes, it's risky, but again, one of the points was making sure that you're doing it under appropriate boundaries. Thank you, Jean.
Oops, thank you very much. This mute button.
I know, right? Okay. And again, that is important, because without knowing who you are, it's really hard to be your authentic self. I'm on time. Okay. Okay. Our next case study. An urban mental health clinic serving a diverse population recognizes the need to enhance cultural competence within their peer support program. Believe it or not, this question comes up in peer support, but it doesn't come up, it may not necessarily come up in a clinic, because in your environment, you think that you're only going to attract those people that you look like, those people that you advertise for. And sometimes that doesn't always happen that way. So we end up, for lack of a better word, stepping outside of the box that we know. And so when we talk about cultural competence, why is it important to enhance the cultural competence of peer support programs? One of those rarely asked questions. Because again, we're, in some instances, as a peer, we're at the bottom of the totem pole. And the value of our services are increasing every year, but they're still not at the point where they should be. So when we look at the cultural competence of peer support programs, research allows us to identify that diverse needs, enabling tailored approaches that resonate with varied cultural backgrounds. Research gives us these things. Research lets us know that it is important for the cultural competence to be a major part of the program. When we talk about the research, a collaborative study with the local university assesses the cultural responsiveness of the peer support program. Researchers will then identify key cultural considerations through interviews and surveys. That's how it would be implemented into that particular program, into that particular organization. And then that organization would revise their training material such that there is ongoing cultural competency workshops. We're not going to hit everybody on the first go round. That's why we keep going around. And we keep going around so that we can be as impactful to as many people as in such a diverse cultural atmosphere that we live in now, so that we can better address the unique needs of the clients that we serve, of those peers that we serve, the people that we serve. And so because of that, we end up respecting diversity. We end up building trust and rapport. We end up reducing disparities in care. and increase effectiveness of interventions. On this page, the key one that I think, the one that resonated with me, was the respecting of diversity. We're ensuring that peers, that individuals from the various cultural backgrounds will receive respectful support, the support that acknowledges, that upholds their beliefs, their values, their traditions. Because if we overlook cultural competence, the organization risks providing a one-size-fits-all approach. And we know one-size-fits-all does not work. One-size-fits-all does not meet the needs in a diverse community. So these are some of the resulting behaviors. And additionally, we have enhancing communication, which that cultural competence that improves the communication by taking into account all these other things that we take for granted: language preferences, nonverbal cues, communication styles that vary across cultures. When I learned about individuals and communicating with individuals of various cultures and backgrounds, I learned a few things. Some people will not look you in the eye. In some cultures, that's disrespectful. In others, that's respectful. We'll see it as, you must not be listening to me because you're not looking at me. Well, if we understand the culture, we can understand those communication styles and not offend anyone. We're avoiding those stereotypes and assumptions. And while we're doing all of that, promoting inclusivity, where we're including everyone, including the ability to support everyone, or as many people as we can that come through the peer support program. And then legal and ethical considerations. We all have a code of ethics. We know that the legal and ethical requirements must be met in a mental health setting. We must be able to adhere to the standards that safeguards the rights and well-beings of all individuals, regardless of what their cultural background is. That was our second case study. Any thoughts or questions on that second case study? Because again, I will provide room at the end. Yes. So our third case study. Once again, we have a peer support agency that acknowledges the approach to qualifications within their program. So that's one of those frequently asked questions. What are the qualifications for peer support? So in recognizing the need to explore the balance between lived experience and professional development, the agency seeks to ensure a comprehensive and effective peer support model. So the question becomes, when we talk about the value of lived experience, what if the peer support provider only had lived experiences? Will this qualify that person as an effective peer support provider? A rarely asked question. Because we know that the foundation of peer support is the lived experience. But is that all that the peer supporter needs to have? While crucial, while important, lived experiences need to be complemented by ongoing training, ensuring a balance between empathy and professional competence. So it's not just lived experience, but it's lived experience plus. That lived experience is the foundation, because when you're in your foundation, then you're able to meet someone where they are because you've been there before. And that's the value of the lived experience. But then there are other components. When we look at research has conducted these focus groups, interviews to understand how people, first of all, perceive the qualifications of the peer provider. And then the research has looked at the idea of the mix between lived experience and formal training. The organization, because of the research, then it's able to refine its hiring criteria, making sure that there is a combination. That's why there's peer support certification. That's why there's ongoing continuing education. Peer support is a profession, and it is a profession that is rapidly being recognized in the same room as social workers, psychologists, all of those who have the multiple degrees. You don't need the degree to be a peer specialist, but something more than lived experience is what's needed to be an effective peer specialist. And so when that's understood, our resulting behaviors become holistic understanding, that balanced approach that ensures a holistic understanding of the individual's needs, the needs of those that we are supporting. Because while lived experience contributes empathy and relatability, which is important, once again, that foundation of peer support, professional development equips the peer with the necessary skills and knowledge to address complex mental health challenges comprehensively. So I'm not just telling you what happened to me, but I'm also sharing with you facts. I'm also sharing with you what the research says. I'm also sharing with you what is known in the mental health community. So having a little more than just the lived experience is what makes the peer an effective peer specialist. Ethical considerations, that professionalism that aligns with the ethical standards. When you look at the ethics of any profession, there are rules that are put in place to allow the supporter or the provider to do the very best that they can without creating unrealistic expectations, without fostering relationships that are inappropriate in the profession. Those ethical considerations are there because those rarely asked questions have been asked. Additionally, having more than a lived experience enhances the credibility of the peer. It allows a flexibility in the approach of how services are provided. It incorporates quality assurance so that the one who is receiving services knows that there is some credibility behind what it is that you're sharing with me. My story is my story. You can't tell me that my story is right or wrong because it's my story. But when I add to my story, the things that I add to my story are the professional aspects of peer support that we give to those whom we're supporting. And once again, we have that stigma reduction. I'm talking to you from my lived experience, and then I'm sharing with you what the professional world says. Those mental health challenges are reduced because I'm now emphasizing that there's a balanced approach, and that reinforces the idea that seeking support is a proactive and a professional choice. Then the diversity of perspectives, and as well as career development for peer supporters. Some people are peer supporters and they are peer supporter for life. And there are others that are using the peer support position as a stepping stone into some other mental health field. Everyone has their own individual goals and aspirations, and that's all good, but you cannot do it just on your lived experience. So getting that professional development gives you the credibility to move forward. It gives you the credibility as you are sharing with those that you're supporting. And then it reminds others that you indeed are a professional. Case study number 4. Case study number 4. We have a large corporation, and they recognize the prevalence of mental health stigma among its employees, and they decide to implement a peer support program. Many organizations are doing that now because they see that things are going on among their employees. So they've taken a step to do something about it. But what do we do? What do we do about the stigma of mental health? So our question, why do peer support programs play a role in destigmatizing mental health in the workplace? Why does that happen? Because a peer support program creates an open dialogue, it challenges the stigma, and it makes for an inclusive work environment. When you have a peer support program, the threat of being terminated because of a mental health challenge is decreased. Employees are encouraged to seek out services for their mental health so that they can continue to be that productive employee. So what does the research say? What has the research done, rather? They have done surveys and confidential interviews to assess the impact of the peer support program on reducing mental health stigma. They've investigated changes in employee attitudes and perceptions. Just think about it. In your workplace, or if you've been in a workplace where there was no talk about self-care, there was no talk about taking a mental health day, there was no talk about what are you doing to take care of yourself, take a day off and take care of yourself. When there is no talk of that, there is a sense of tension. There is it's not always a great workplace. Sometimes it even turns into a toxic workplace because there are things going on with people that are not being addressed. So that practical application, based on those research findings, the organization expands the peer support program and it integrates mental health awareness campaigns into the workplace culture. In other words, it's the norm. It is now the norm, and the environment is created so that it is normal to say, I need a mental health day. It is normal to say, I need to see somebody or I need to talk to somebody. And having that peer goes back to what we talked about at the beginning, goes back to the foundation of a peer support. Someone who has that lived experience, someone who's been through some things, who had similar experiences, and are able to empathize, are able to listen, are able to speak without judgment. And having that in the workplace can make for a better place to be at work. And so some of the things that are the resulting behaviors: employee well-being, that stigma is lessened because of the desire for the employees to be well. Productivity and engagement, stigma can negatively impact that. Because if I'm not feeling good, guess what? I'm not going to work well today. Today is not a good day. All of that stuff I had to do, I'm having a day and it's not going to happen. But if there is a place for me to go and talk about it, if there is someone I can talk to without judgment, if that's the norm, then it'll be more readily acceptable and I can become that productive employee that the corporation wants me to be. It also reduces barriers to seeking help. If it's a stigma, I'm not going to seek help. But if it's the norm, then I'll go because I won't be looked down upon, I won't be judged. And then we have that positive workplace culture. The workplace that's actively involved in destigmatizing mental health, it contributes to a positive and a supportive culture within the workplace. And those legal and ethical considerations are always there when we talk about mental health. We talk about our medical conditions. We're all aware of HIPAA. We're all aware of confidentiality. So it's not to say that mental health challenges will be broadcast all over the place. But on the contrary, it's saying that we have to be respectful as we are destigmatizing mental health, seeking of mental health. There are all types of laws and regulations. Human resources will run it down to you and let you know what you can and cannot do. But being able to have someone there, being able to have an avenue to destigmatize mental health will greatly encourage, will greatly detoxify as well the workplace. Talent retention and attraction. This is a great place to work. So that means people who can do the work are going to be drawn to the workplace, to that corporation. People who are there will enjoy coming to work and will less likely want to try and find another job. Destigmatization, when it comes from the top down, that's the leadership demonstrating and sending that powerful message that it's okay not to be okay. But don't just sit in your not okay. Go and do something. Go and get some support. We have the EAPs, employee assistance programs. We have things here in place for you to receive mental health services, or for you to bare minimum talk to somebody. Go and ask for help. It's not a shame to ask for help. And when you go and ask for help, you are becoming more of an asset to that corporation. And then our last case study. A mental health organization recognizes the potential benefits of technology in improving peer support services. Technology is everywhere. We're on technology right now, and we're all across the country. So to discount the value of technology is not something that an up-and-coming mental health organization would want to do. But then in that rarely asked question, why is the use of technology important to enhance peer support services? If you're involved with technology, if you're in the peer world, that seems like a no-brainer of a question. And sometimes those rarely asked questions are the questions that we think are no-brainers. But on the contrary, integrating technology enables a wider reach. It enables real-time support and innovative solutions, and then it improves the overall effectiveness of peer services. If you're sick and you need support, I don't mean no harm, but I don't want you in my office. But I still want to be able to give you support. And technology allows that to happen. But those who are short-sighted, those who don't understand that part, discount the value of technology. So researchers have evaluated that effectiveness of a virtual peer support platform through user feedback, assessing the platform's impact on accessibility and quality of support. We experienced this firsthand during the pandemic, when at the very beginning of the pandemic, peer services over Zoom, over any telehealth, that was unheard of. That was, no, you cannot do it, because peer support is meant to be done face-to-face. But alas, we see that during the pandemic, we've been able to provide peer support via technology, whether you're on the phone, whether you're on Zoom, whether you're doing FaceTime, whether you're just watching videos. The technology has proven to be important in providing peer services. So because of that, the organization is able to scale up the use of their virtual platform based on positive research outcomes. Because research has said it, now I can amp up what I'm doing because it's now evidence-based. Training programs are developed to equip peer support providers with the skills needed for effective online management. We're dealing with new technology. Every day, it seems like something new is coming out. When your technology updates, it doesn't just update to update, it updates because it adds a new piece to it. And so now you see, I've never seen that before. Well, I don't know how that works. I was on a Zoom the other day and the facilitator said, okay, everybody pick up your pen and we're going to do the whiteboard. And several people could not find the pen to utilize the whiteboard. Every time it updates, there's something new. So having, again, ongoing training so that our peers can be equipped to use this technology. And what does this do? It expands our reach and accessibility. It provides real-time support. You can call someone right now, you can FaceTime them, you can Zoom them, you can chat with them right now and give them the support when they need it. Allows for diverse communication channels, messaging, video calls, online forums. The use of technology has a wide array of ways to communicate and ways to provide support. And then there are data-driven insights, because data is collected, and in that data, research and practical applications are able to see how well it works. And then, of course, innovative solutions. At first, it was just one-on-one. And then we figured out how to do a group using technology. And that, again, makes peer support more effective to those whom we are serving. And then we also realize that with technology, there are options for anonymity. Just like at the beginning of this call, if you did not want to be on camera, you can turn your camera off, you can change your name. It's crucial for those who are hesitant to seek support due to privacy concerns, because the stigma is not gone, it's still there. But there are people who still don't feel that I want people to know that I'm doing this. I don't want anybody to accidentally run across my name on the support list. Then there's the scalability and sustainability, where the organization can reach a larger audience. The organization can provide services to many, many more people than what was originally thought of, originally encountered. And along with that, the global connectivity, worldwide international support can be given. Different time zones, regardless of the weather. All you need is a signal and a device, and find the platform that works, and support can be given on a global level. So those were our 5 case studies, the 5 case studies on a few of the rarely asked questions. So we've defined that importance of bridging the research and the practice. It's not enough to say, we did research and this works. Now you take the research and you put it into practice. And then when you put it into practice, you get to see, is this something that is really working? Or do I have another question to ask behind it? And then we also introduced the concept of the rarely asked questions and their significance. Rarely asked questions are important. If you think of one, share it, because the peer support network needs to know what is going on in the minds of others so that we can enhance the services that we're already providing. So we have about 15 minutes left, few minutes left. Any questions? What questions do you have? Cassidy, were there any questions in the chat?
There are some comments, not questions.
Okay. Let me see. Okay, I see from Jean. Thank you, Jean. I remember when we went to Zoom meetings and we all resisted. Now we see the pleasure of seeing members and meeting others from all over the US. Thank you. Yes, all over the US, all over the world. And when we look at the ability to use technology, and you think about sharing your lived experience, sharing with others. I'm gonna leave this up here while we're still answering questions. When you think about the ability to share with others that are across the waters, in a whole nother country, in a whole nother culture, and being able to share your lived experience and finding out that you're not the only one who experienced that. You're finding out that you're not the only one who went through the situation that you went through, or the experiences that you had. You're not the only one. So now you're able to leverage your experiences and support others in the process. I have a hand, Rhonda.
Yes, ma'am. I, as we were speaking to all of the different resources that we have within our own companies and such, if you work for, a large company,
Mhm.
um, I had relapsed after 28 years of being sober. And, of course, I went directly back into my old way of being, not showing up to work, kind of drunk, and then not going back after lunch because I was really drunk. Anyway, I remember my boss at the time, because I wouldn't go to work, I wouldn't, I wouldn't call out and such. And long story short, and what I'm getting at is that there were um, resources there for me to reach out to. First of all, I was in so much shame for relapsing after 28 years sober. Okay,
Mhm.
did not want to tell them that. There was no peer support in house that I could relate to and share. I didn't want to lose my job, you
Right.
know, um, which I eventually got fired, and it didn't take long. And my point is, I remember about those rarely asked questions. What can I do to help you right now, today? And just having that more that key person
Mhm.
to understand and to really be a peer support within our human resources, because it is scary to go to the director of human resources and say, "Hey, look, I'm going to work drunk.
Right.
You're going to fire me. I don't come to work and I don't call out." But so again, my point in doing that is trying to create an environment. I do so with my peers because I've had peers that have relapsed, you
Mhm.
know, and I can share with in the shame, and I can share with them. I had 28 years sober, you know. Look, you're even talking about it right now. So it's kind of a double-edged sword. We need that piece in our human resources in our guidance areas, but we also need to be that transparent with my peers. I need to be transparent with my peers that this is a safe place for you to come to, that I'm not going to share your business, that
Mhm.
I can offer my experience, my strength, and my hope, and in a gentle way lead you to the resources that can ultimately help you so you do not lose your job.
Yes. Thank you for sharing that. Thank you for sharing that. And that is important because nobody is perfect. We go through things, um, and we fall down, but we get up.
Amen.
And sometimes we need help getting up. But if
That's
there is
right.
no help, if there is no help around, then I have to figure it out by myself. And it comes from within, whether I pull up enough of whatever it is that I need to pull up so that I can get up. But speaking on the workplace, if there is a mechanism, if there is something set up so that you don't have to fear losing your job, where somebody or somebodies can be authentic, their authentic selves, and check on each other. We know that we don't come to work to make friends, but we have to be here. We're at work, you're at work almost a third of your life. And being there, you have to be able to be that, the reason that you're there is to do the work that you're being paid to do. So if you're not doing the work that you're being paid to do, then now it's management, the leadership is their role to say, okay, what's going on and what can we do? And depending on who asks that question will depend on what happens next. Because there's the unsympathetic supervisor who says, I just need to get these numbers done. If you can't do it, I'll find somebody else to do it. And then there's the coworker who you've chatted with over lunch a few times. They've been through what you've been through, or you all are able to share similar stories. where someone can see that you're having a little of an off day. And they'll approach you, they'll ask you, they'll talk to you about, what's going on. I see that you're a little off today. But being able to implement that in the workplace is an asset to the company. I have a friend who is working on that kind of a project where she's talking to different companies about implementing peer support into the ranks of the norm. It's not going to be like, okay, put your picture on the wall and we're going to label you as having a mental health challenge so you can go and see the peer. It's very understated, but it's enough so that those who are seeking help are not shamed or not judged because they're seeking help. Because that's in those in recovery know that the first time you hit that wall of rejection, that first time that you're embarrassed, is I'm done, I'm over, I'm not coming back. And in the employment field, in the workplace, that's not what you want to happen. You want the employees to realize that we understand. We know that everyone has a bad day. Everyone doesn't have good days every day, but we want to do what we can do to support you because we want you to stay. Your talent is valuable. We want you to stay. And sometimes it's a selfish reason, and that's okay because the company is in business to make money. So then what they have to look at is what is causing our bottom line to be not where we want it to be, where our employees are having challenges. So then what do we do about those challenges? Let's see if we can implement a peer support program. And that tells the employees that leadership is concerned about them as individuals. Rhonda?
Yes, ma'am. I'll be brief.
Oh.
Something you just said about in the workplace and such that really kind of hit me. How supportive am I within the walls of my peers and what I do? Now on the firing line, I am out there 100%, right? But and something for me, my takeaway is to start checking on my peers. Start developing because anyway, I moved here from whatever. I don't have a lot. I don't have work friends. Okay, I don't have work friends. I'm friends with people that are out there on the streets. But to keep in mind, and I think that this is what came up. To keep in mind that we're people too. That we're peer supporters. We're here to provide. We're here to lift up. However, us admitting I'm empty. I need to recharge or whatever is very difficult for me, because I'm out there doing the most.
Yes.
Anyway, that was
And
just a takeaway for me that it
okay,
was kind of an aha moment
thank you
that
for sharing
self-care.
that. Because it goes back to what I shared at the very beginning, where there was a peer who had a challenging situation with someone who was seeking support, and it did not turn out well. And the peer was not well. The whole concern was on the other person, the individual that was coming to get help that was turned away. It was a whole lot of stuff that happened that made the agency look bad. It put the agency in a bad light because of how they treated this individual who came looking for help. But nobody checked on the peer. Nobody went to the peer and said, how are you doing after all of this has happened? There were reprimands. There were meetings about how did this happen? Why did this happen? What did we do? What can we do next time? But nobody asked the peer, how are you doing? And the peer was kind of like, was not happy with that. If she was able to leave the job, she would have left the job. That's how bad it was. Because when you don't feel like you have support, then it becomes, why am I here? Because we're talking about mutuality here. The workplace, yes, you pay me, but I'm here to do work, but you should, in the very least, check on me like you're checking on those that you're providing support for. And so that's the vulnerability of the first case study we talked about, being able to, what do you have set in place to deal with peers who are acknowledging that they're vulnerable? There are some instances where I'm not going to tell you everything that's going on with me, but something is going on. And a particular situation happened that made me not feel well after it happened. So what can I do, or who can I talk to, or what is my next step? And if there is no support, if there is no place to land, then that creates a challenge, a whole nother challenge. So as we look at our organizations, our mental health organizations, let's ask those rarely asked questions. Let's look at the research behind those rarely asked questions and see if it's something that can be implemented into the day-to-day operations of our mental health organizations. Because as peers, we are committed to supporting someone who's gone through something. My own personal thing is I went through some things, and I don't want anyone else to go through what I went through, because I went through it alone. I went through it without any support. I went through it without any help. So as a peer, I don't want anybody else to go through that type of situation. So when we look to the organizations we work with, the organizations we work for, the mental health world in general, we have to look at what are we doing to fully support the people who are seeking support from us as a peer. What am I doing? What could I do better? And am I being the most effective peer that I can be? So are there any other questions or comments? So we have about 5 minutes left. I want to put the slide back up with my contact information on it. And I would like to encourage you to, if you have any questions or would like to carry on the conversation, let's see if I can do this without, let's see, how did this work? It didn't work. Okay, here we go. There we go. All right. Technology at its finest. So again, I'm Dr. Kathy Cash, U.S. Army veteran. I pastor Determined to Know Christ Ministries. I have podcasts on all the major podcast networks. I'm a certified peer support specialist, and I'm CEO and founder of Strategies for Hope, Peer Empowerment Center. And as a recent retiree from the Department of Veteran Affairs, I continue to serve and support veterans in the community. And I'm always, I'm just passionate about supporting others and wanting others to live that abundant life that we have been placed here to enjoy. Juliet, I see a question. Let me stop sharing. More on resilience in peer work. So when we talk about, I got a couple of more minutes. When we talk about resiliency in peer work, being able to continue to be our authentic self in spite of the challenges that we face individually. We acknowledge that we are still in recovery, that there are still things that we are dealing with. We're acknowledging them, we're not hiding them. And because we have taken ownership of those areas in our lives that still need work, we are able to continue to stand knowing that we are equipping ourselves and continually equipping ourselves with tools and resources to be that effective peer. So that as we recognize that we are still vulnerable in this space, we also see that we are in a safe space so that the challenges that we face won't overcome us. And when we talk about that resiliency, the ability to stand up and forge ahead, and the effective peer support that we're providing to others. Did that answer your question? All right, thank you. Because it is tough out there, and we are resilient, we are authentic, we have lived experiences. We're empathetic, but we also have to take care of ourselves. And we take care of ourselves so that we can take care of others.